Hi everyone, Titan Quest 2 just launched into early access and I had a blast playing through this for something like 30 hours at this point, so I want to show it off to you guys and tell you what it's all about. If you don't know Titan Quest, this is a very old school ARPG that came out almost 20 years ago and is now getting a successor developed by THQ Nordic, who are also sponsoring this video. So thank you to them, but I can only say I actually had a really good time. In fact, they also sponsored me to stream this game a little bit for like 2 hours, but I've actually played it for 32 hours at this point. So that was a pretty good time so far. Right now, the early access includes the entire Act 1 campaign. So you can play through the prologue, create your class, and then go through the first major area in the game, which includes also a bunch of other stuff that you don't actually see on this map right now, like some underground areas and dungeons and so on. And more content is being added in the major updates coming every few months. There are 4 separate masteries, and in this game you don't choose a class, but you choose 2 masteries as a combination, so that actually allows for more different varieties of playstyles. So there's a lot of stuff to explore, and I've actually created 6 characters to play through this, which was a ton of fun to explore. So right now the game features one major zone that you need several hours to play through. There's a ton of side quests, main quests that you go through and you level up and obviously get better gear, get more skills. And then you also have a bunch of really cool boss fights. Here's one of them, for example, that is like one of the major bosses in the current storyline. And there's more of them like this. So they're all like really well designed, I think, beautiful animations. The game overall looks really great. And I think if you get more of the same in future updates, it's going to be amazing. The game is certainly heavily focused on exploration and questing and the storyline behind it. There's lots of little stories that you can uncover, lots of things to find and little events that pop up that you run into, especially on your first playthrough. There's a lot of stuff to see. And that took me around 7 hours to complete, like almost everything. I have gotten faster, of course, now that I know the map and where the quests are and what to do. But even on a speedrun, it takes me several hours to do everything that's currently available. And that is just going to increase more in content. The developers said that the game is going to get major updates roughly every 3 months, so you can expect more acts, more masteries, more skills, etc. A crafting system is coming, a loot filter button I've seen that is currently unavailable. Lots of good stuff, I think, but the foundation is already really great. But let's talk a little bit about what makes Titan Quest special and why I have been enjoying it so much. So I think the main reason for that is their mastery and their skill system, which is both pretty intuitive, but also opens up a lot of really interesting combos that you can explore. And this is why I have created so many characters already. So for example, this is like this Storm mastery. Right now there are 4 in total in the game that you can choose, which is done very early on in the prologue. Basically right after you start, you get your first mastery and then you play through the first zone a little bit and then you get your second mastery. So you get your stuff kind of online pretty early, and you have currently available Earth, Rogue, Storm, and Warfare. And you just pick 2 of them and make a combo, and that defines what class you are. So for example, on this character I have chosen Storm and Rogue, and that gives me access to all of the Storm skills and passives and all of the Rogue skills and passives. And then I can choose to distribute my available points between the 2 however I want, or even invest into the core skills that everyone gets. So there's like a primary attack and a secondary version of that, so you can have 2 separate ones of those. And there's a barrier skill, so you don't really have stuff like energy shield or so, but it's all kind of like defined by your barrier ability, which is like your main defensive tool. And then you have a dodge, which is like a kind of evade ability, but even that you can customize. So you can invest more points into each skill, and then you can choose modifiers for each of them. And the same with passives. They also even have like some modifier choices, although they're a bit simpler. But for skills, those can be quite drastic adjustments and completely different playstyles you open up. So a relatively basic example would be my Stormblade here. So this is Storm plus Rogue. And I played this as a bit like a D2 Javason. So we have like this kind of lightning bolt, it's called, ability that we spam all the time. And this is like our builder, and it does a bit of like chaining between enemies. And then we have the Core Lightning like striking down with heavy damage after a build-up. But normally the skill looks a little bit different. So I have 2 extra strikes with a 1-second interval, and I have a delay for extra damage here. And usually the base version of the skill is just like 1 instant zap, and that's about it. but I invested into it and made it repeat 2 times. It can go for even more if I want. And like this, I have a really huge burst of damage by only using the ability once. And not only that, but I also made a combo with my lightning bolt, which is something of like a combo point builder basically for this, by using the consume overwhelm. So this is a mechanic where you build up 3 stacks, and then I can use this modifier here to deal more damage. So I basically do like a 1 to 3 build up like this, and then I have like this heavy triple lightning strike, especially when I position monsters or like a boss in that, it does some crazy damage. But there are alternative ways of playing the exact same skill. So for example, it can also use this as some sort of builder to get Rage, for example, which gives me a bigger damage multiplier for my other skills. I can use Overload, which is a mechanic where I get extra effects, but I take damage over time, so I have to try to out-heal that, for example, or use my barrier. And there's, for example, also this like lightning strike kind of secondary damage mechanic that is built into some of those storm skills, and so on. So with those modifiers available, you can actually make some skills look and feel and play completely different. A more impressive example is probably the ice shots. So I'm going to be showing that off real quick. I'm going to do a bit of a respec here and put points there. This can be done very easily with just a bit of gold, by the way. And I'm going to show off this skill. So we have ice shots, which is a starter skill for storm as well. Looks like this. And you might have seen this at the intro of the video where I was playing ice shots and it looked very different. So first you can add some more projectiles, for example. So suddenly our skill looks like this. We have a lot more stuff going on and they can all shotgun. Or you can add, for example, some pierces. It doesn't really show now, but now we can, hit an entire pack with that, for example, and just, pierce through everything. Or you do something like this here, where you shoot in all directions and you get mini projectiles. So this is what the chaos modifier looks like. And then we have some interesting stuff here with orbit and homing. So the way this works is that homing allows the projectiles to bend in their trajectory and home in on enemies or around you, for example, with the orbit modifier. And suddenly we have this like circle of ice shots flying around us that just follow us around, and then when you go to the next pack, you can just kind of precast them, for example, teleport over into a pack, and they will fly in and kind of blast everything. And I think now you might understand why I had so much fun trying out this relatively short game so far with various characters, because there's so many different combinations of classes that you can make, so many ways to even play the same class. So for example, here I have 2 Reavers and I have 2 Stormblades, but they were completely different builds. One was, for example, like a melee, kind of like a shadow stepping kind of character, teleporting from enemy to enemy with a big 2-handed mace and one-shotting everything. Then we had, here was my bow character, so I played like a poison bow, rogue, like warfare combo. Here we had a Stormblade and another Stormblade, so one of them was the Ice Shards, one was the Lightning character as I showed. And here's an Elementalist, which is like Storm plus Earth, and here's Ash Stalker, which is Rogue plus Earth as well. So this was like a Firecaster here, and also like here a separate version of a Firecaster. That there's like so many combinations and synergies you can build. And of course the game feels completely different depending on what choices you make here. You can have more or less skills on your bar, you can build your character with different stats and different playstyles. So this is my Elementalist right now, which is basically just a 1-button build where I spam this rolling magma here and it does a ton of damage. It hits like a truck because I invested everything into it. There's also Moira's Codex, which is a bit like a collector's book where you get like a badge for completing the first act basically, and a prologue with each of the individual class combos or even individual masteries, or unblessed even if you don't choose anything. So you can actually try to catch them all basically. Or for example, there are these unique items slash epic items that you can find. They are pretty rare and kind of interesting in some ways. So they have like some crazy stats that might really shape your build as well. I do have to say those epic items are pretty rare. You get a few from some bosses in specific places. There's also one from a quest. But other than that, those random drops are really very few. I've found maybe like a handful, not even one per character, I believe, in those like a few hours I played each of them. But some of them have pretty interesting effects and have like a lot of stats on them, and they are kind of like specialized towards certain builds and so on. So besides the different abilities and items that make the game interesting to play through from various angles with different builds, you also have this Greek mythology setting for the game. So this is the Titan quest, and you're following this like Titan storyline. You meet Greek gods and mythological creatures, and you have a lot of like dialogue and story involved here, and like lots of interesting little background knowledge and characters that you might have already seen or heard before. And during my playthroughs, especially the first time around, I definitely had some pretty big wow moments when it comes to the voice acting, the sounds, the music, and the visuals presented to you. So I think all of that stuff is really well done for at least the content that we have so far. And I can only imagine how great it's going to be when the final like full campaign is out. So while the game currently doesn't have any real endgame besides grinding the existing zones and bosses on higher levels and getting higher level loot or something like that, there seems to be some plans for an endgame like repeatable experience. So my conclusion for now is that Titan Quest 2 is a small but nice game, and if you get more of the same, it's going to be a pretty amazing experience, at least for a little bit. I probably wouldn't expect to grind this for thousands of hours, but some people might, and with all of the different mastery class combinations that will be available in the late game, and with even more masteries added in the future, for example, I think it's going to be a ton of fun to go through this game. So as long as the developers keep updating the game, which they said they will do with major updates every few months and maybe some smaller stuff in between, I think it's going to be a great game to come back to and continue the story. Or get it now, try it out a little bit, and wait until all of the acts are in, and then play through the entire thing in one go. Good thing is, there is a Steam sale going on right now, so for the start of the early access, they actually have a 20% sale for the game that lasts until 8th of August. So the first week, basically, they give us a little bit of an offer, and it's also likely that they will raise the price once more content is in. So if you get the game early, then you'll get it for cheap, and you can enjoy the free updates that come later down the line until the full launch. They also told me that this game is buy to play, and there's no plans for microtransactions right now. So if you get it, you will have all of the updates, etc. later on as well. But of course, there might be DLCs or expansions once the full release is out, which is currently scheduled for late 2026. And to get ahead of some of the questions that you might have had, I'm just gonna rapid fire through a few things that I kept getting questions about 1,000 times every single day streaming this. So hardcore, yes. SSF, yes. Console support will be on full launch. So right now it's only PC on Steam and Epic Games Store. Stash is shared between characters if you choose to, but you have the SSF mode. Multiplayer exists, currently a bit unstable, but it can go up to 4-player co-op. PvP is apparently not going to be a thing. How is the stability? For me, it was pretty good, I gotta say. I had like 2 crashes in those 30 hours or something, but that was not really a big deal. It's kind of expected, I guess, for early access. And FPS and performance, how's the optimization? It seems okay, but probably more work to be done. To be honest, I can't really say much about this. I have an insane Starforge PC. I heard from some people having a bit of stutterers and changing their settings a bit to work, but I also expect this to improve over time. And that concludes what I got on Titan Quest 2 for now. So overall, my impressions were very positive. Everything was just really well done and well crafted and really fun. And it's just kind of too little of it. But updates are coming, more content is coming, the campaign is going to get completed. So for me, it was definitely worth giving the game a shot. I had a good time. I'm probably going to play more, even make a 7th and maybe an 8th character or so and just try more stuff. And whenever the next update drops, I'm planning to get back and jump in Act 2 and keep progressing whatever I have there. So I'm going to leave you with that. You're going to find a link to their Steam page down in the description and in the pinned comment. So go check it out. Right now, again, it's on sale until the 8th of August. So you can maybe snatch a deal there and have a really good game on your hands for down the line. So hope you enjoyed my video here. Let me know what you think, especially if you have tried the game already. And I'll see you guys next time.